I said to myself, actually, this is the perfect moment.
The perfect moment.
And I turned around, took 3 steps, and I go, actually, Mark, could I get a picture? Well, here we are.
Once again.
And thank goodness we had the crack research team clean up all the pizza boxes.
Well, I mean, Lou, you can't really do this for very long in such a filthy environment. I mean,
you mean like living together in 1998?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I do mean that because there were an equal amount of pizza boxes in a once beautiful, a once okay townhome in the Como neighborhood of the University of Minnesota.
Right.
This studio is gorgeous.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Until we brought in 11 pizza boxes and slept on the floor and basically showered by going into the men's room and splashing a little water on our cheeks.
I didn't know that I could make it all the way to the men's room when there's a perfectly good drinking fountain on the way.
And this is how the podcast ends. Whatever. Water is water, and water is life.
We'll see what ends up making to the show, because we are in the midst of cancel culture here. We just have to be very careful.
We do.
Right?
I don't like cancel culture.
We
should do a show on that.
I intend to, particularly because, if you haven't watched Dave Chappelle's recent...
I'm going to. I haven't watched it yet. I have every intention to.
Yeah, and I'll say that my first impression on that, other than from the entertainment value, is I think he deliberately baited all of the cancel culture people. And unsurprisingly, what I'd read, and I couldn't verify this, was that initially all the Rotten Tomatoes reviews on it were zero.
Yep.
And then once they opened it up to the audience, it
basically went to 100.
It went to 100.
Yeah.
And you can only get 99% as far as I know.
Yeah.
But he got 99%.
Dave Chappelle strikes me as an almost Andy Kaufman-esque figure.
I think it's if on one axis,
like
the axis of Andy Kaufman, and on the other axis you have George Carlin.
Yeah.
I feel like he is making a lot more like philosophical commentary on
I see what you're saying.
Culture the way that Carlin did.
However, on that axis, or maybe if you look at the axis as a whole, what always struck me about Chappelle is that he also seems to be doing some sort of meta, like, performance art.
Yeah.
So he is making social commentary, but he's not, and he is doing it with his comedy.
Right.
But he's also doing it in the way he has presented his comedy.
Right. In
the fashion that it's like this Reddit or this Rotten Tomatoes thing.
Right.
I'm sure he expected that would happen.
Yeah.
He strikes me as a bright enough guy to where, like, he knew how this would roll out.
Yeah. I'm really impressed right now.
And it almost reinforces his point. I mean, the fact that he's essentially been McCarthyized by Hollywood basically reinforces the point that he makes in the comedy.
Yes. And, what I love about the state of comedy right now is that we've got a couple of comedians like that. We've got Bill Burr, we've got Chappelle making this like commentary on society that I think was kind of gone for a little bit.
Well, a lot of comedians, I think Jerry Seinfeld included, and some others have spoken out about the sort of woke culture,
cancel culture,
comedy, killing comedy, because you can't have comedy without risking. Comedy is risk.
Right.
You have to accept that. Your comedian with whom you're investing your time for entertainment purposes, you have to allow them some artistic license. And, it's not only that during the time of the show, but also digging back things they might have said 10 and 15 and 20 years ago.
Right.
And I know Chappelle gets into this, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Is really damaging. I mean, it's just not just for that person or that instance, but for the whole culture.
Absolutely.
It's inappropriate.
Yeah, and there's something, I recently heard Bill Burr really talk about that too, that, we're in the midst of this weird thing where if you're seeing live comedy, have you been to a live comedy show recently?
Not recently, I guess, but...
for some of the bigger shows, especially if they're like working up towards like fine-tuning their comedy for a special, everybody's cell phone goes in this little like lockable pouch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah. But it's also a weird feeling.
To not have access to your phone?
Not just that, but that you're carrying around this weird locked pouch and your phone is in it. But Bill Burr's comment on that was pretty fascinating because he did say, and as I'm talking right now, I'm almost too self-aware of what the audience is thinking of the show right now, because there is something to be said about how, when you're entertaining for an audience, sometimes you don't actually know what's going to resonate for that audience. And we've talked about it on the show a ton already, that because of that, for a comedian, it takes a while to find the funny. So what you write down on paper and is funny to you right now might not actually land with the audience. And you might need to adjust it a little bit. And in the meantime, you might make a misstep or deliver it just the wrong way so that it comes across as offensive instead of actually a little bit poignant or funny. And that process is something in the back of my mind right now. I'm like, oh, wow, everybody just turned off the Hot Lou show.
I give the lunatics more credit that they're willing to go with us on this journey. We'll have to, I'm sure, I know we exchanged almost a text message preparing for this show. But I'm sure this wasn't the topic, but I think it is an interesting topic, and we should spend an entire episode on it at some point, because it's, I think there's a responsible way to be sensitive to other people's feelings and their particular history, without having to censor everybody all the time.
Absolutely. And it does actually bring me a little bit to the point of the show that we're going to talk about today.
Oh, wow. You masterfully did that. You're like the Dave Chappelle of this podcast.
I mean, we might as well add Dave Chappelle to the celebrity listener list.
Welcome to the show, celebrity listener Dave Chappelle. You're always 100 in the Rotten Tomatoes reviews on hotlou.com.
And what a pleasure it must be for you, Dave Chappelle, to be listening to the Dave Chappelle of podcasts. Hot Lou.
Yeah. Speaking of meta, that makes you the Andy Kaufman of the Dave Chappelle of the Dave Chappelle. No, wait. Shoot.
We'll put a diagram in the show notes, but this is the Hot Lou Show, and I am your host, Louis Abramowski, or somewhat fanatically referred to as Hot Lou.
And I am sure to be canceled sidekick Mike Franklin.
But it is kind of relevant because today I wanted to talk about the day that I met my Lord and Savior, Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, wow. This has got to be a great story.
I think so, and I want to make sure our producer is ready at the helm with the beep button. Although we don't beep here, we actually mute out most of the cuss words that we've had so far, and I think most of them have come from guests, not hosts. But this actually goes back to early in the 8th Bridge days. We attended Facebook's developer conference, which is now known as F8, and I don't even recall if the first one we went to was called F8 at the time, but at the time it was pretty simple. All you had to do was pay the $200 or something to go to this developer conference, and Zuckerberg was starting to become kind of a household name, but at that point, it wasn't like he had security detail around his house or around him. He really was just roaming around the conference. And, there was a couple people always like, oh, wow, there's Zuckerberg, or there's his sister, or there's a couple of, other Facebook executives. And what's kind of funny is that very first one that I went to, Andy Samberg came out for the keynote, pretending to be Mark Zuckerberg. And it was pretty funny because he started out by saying, this developer conference, I want to make sure that Mark Zuckerberg, is teaching you the one thing that's very important, and it's authenticity. And I actually didn't even know who Andy Samberg was at the time, so I knew it wasn't Zuckerberg, but I didn't know it was a comedian. But as it relates to the huge tangent we went on earlier is, he was walking around all day, and I'm really not a fanboy kind of guy. I think you know this about me, Mike. When I go to we go to Gopher football games, you are generous enough to invite me occasionally, and Vikings games and sports games, I rarely even wear the mascots or the team colors and uniforms and stuff. It's just never been in me to be like that. And with celebrities, I'm not get a picture or whatever, but I kind of had the sense that Zuckerberg was going to be at some point entirely inaccessible. So I kind of thought this was probably the last chance I got. And so I said, after I had seen him
So this was less you being a fanboy and more you being a sort of picture value prognosticator. You're like, I don't necessarily want this picture, but this is going to be the last time I could get one. For example, thinking of another opportunity when we killed a professional wrestler.
we admit that?
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, probably. The statute of limitations on that is probably, 36 months?
Yeah, it's over. We once ran into the Ultimate Warrior in an airport. It turned out to be the day that he died.
Right.
We were leaving we were leaving WrestleMania, so the odds of running into a wrestler were slightly higher than normal in an airport. But we ran into him,
airport,
and it was 6 a.m, and we were like, "Hey, there's the Warrior. We should get a picture. Get a picture with him." He's like, "No, he's here with his family. Like, leave him alone."
Not interrupt him.
Had we known, of course we would have gotten a picture with him.
Yeah,
that would have been. I mean, A, you're not going to get another chance, obviously, in that scenario. But B, you could have been the talk of the internet.
And this is all the point that I want to get to because, I'd seen Zuck walking around like 4 or 5 times and we'd kind of like walk past each other and he's obviously preoccupied and people are, vying for his attention left and right. But it was kind of funny. The conference was over and they were kind of setting up for a concert that night in the same venue and for all of the attendees of the conference. And he's standing there and I'm maybe 10 feet away, and I think he was talking to Sheryl Sandberg, and I just hear him loudly go, "All right, no more f***ing pictures." And I said to myself, actually, this is the perfect moment.
The perfect moment.
And I turned around, took 3 steps, and I go, actually, Mark, could I get a picture? And I just saw his entire body language just fold like a wet napkin. Like, I know I just said this out loud, but I'm going to do it. And he did acquiesce. He said, "All right, fine, come over here." I handed my phone to, I think, what was Sheryl Sandberg.
What is a Sheryl Sandberg? Is this
she's the COO of
She's
Facebook.
the coup. We call it the coup.
The coup. She's the coup.
Yeah.
And a fascinating individual, actually, that we might get into another time. But one really quick aside, as we are wont to do on the show, when Zuckerberg finally hired her after kind of wooing her for probably I think it was like 12 or 18 months. The day he hired her, he told her, "I'm going on vacation for a month and I'm not going to be available. So you're running the company now."
Oh.
Yeah. So he hadn't taken a day off in the, years and years or so that they were, that he had been running Facebook, and he just handed the keys to her. That's how much he trusted her. And that's why the courtship of like over a year ended up panning out. And while he was gone, she invented the type of advertising we see all over Facebook now, which is targeting people based on their interests and demographics rather than the content that they're searching on.
Huh.
Yeah, while he was gone. Because up until that point, the ads on Facebook were not like that in any capacity. So anyway, he yells, "No more f***ing pictures." And I turn around and I say, "Actually, Mark, could I get one?" And which was funny in itself, but I'd say that the other kind of funny part to this is that after this happened, I handed my phone to, I think, what was Sheryl Sandberg, and the phone that I had at the time was a Palm Pre.
Okay.
You might recall.
Yeah.
I was very proud.
You were big into the Palm Pre.
I was very, very proud of it. And the words out of Zuckerberg's mouth is he turned to me and he just gave me this like absolute face of judgment, and he goes, "Really? A Palm Pre?" And
you must have been hurt by this.
Yeah.
The Palm Pre was a very cool phone for the time.
Well, I would like to point out that, the iPhone was out at the time, but the iPhone, maybe 2 or 3 generations after the Palm Pre had kind of run its course, although it does kind of still exist today. Almost everything about that phone is now what is in iOS.
Huh.
So what iPhone ended up turning into, with the exception with Palm Pre had a tactile keyboard on it.
Yeah.
Everything else, like the push notifications, the way it notifies things, the card system for each different app, the one single button on the front screen, the swiping, all of that stuff was in Palm way before it was in iOS.
Wow.
So in a sense, because Palm was so late to the game, I think they had an opportunity to actually completely own that smartphone market. But they launched, I think it was like roughly a year after the first iPhone, and it really cost them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
But in any case, the lesson here.
We need to do a show on the Palm Pre on your production meeting.
Can't wait.
I've still got mine. I'll bring it in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll bring it in. Every once in a while, I plug it in and charge it up and just see if it still works. And it still kind of works.
Yeah, which is funny because I used to joke around that the Palm Pre, because I think I had like 3 or 4 of them replaced under warranty. So in any case, the lesson that I really want to point out here with what happened with my Lord and Savior, Mark Zuckerberg, was that, you're going to get a bunch of no's in life. You're going to get a bunch of people that are clearly telling you they, aren't interested in your product, aren't interested in meeting up. But, there's a really, really important lesson in keep asking that question. Don't just take it for granted that because you think you know the actual outcome of something that you're not even going to try. And in that scenario, I think, I would say that most people in that scenario, when they hear somebody,
absolutely.
they're not even going to try.
I wouldn't have.
And you'd be really surprised at what you can do when you're just out there trying. And, there's a ton of listeners now. I heard from one of them today that's listening to the show because of the ad that I'm running with my photo with.
Well,
with
and I was going to say, if you go to hotlou.com, you can see this photo.
Right.
And it is Mark Zuckerberg looking at his most Commander Data-ish.
I mean, I would like to agree with you, but I don't think he'll ever look more Data-ish than during his senatorial.
Oh, well, that's fair. That is fair. That is fair. He does have a bit of color in his cheeks here, and his eyes are a little red based on the flash, I assume, of your Palm Pre camera photo.
And it looks like he probably got a haircut from actually a normal person.
Yeah, I suppose he hadn't quite gone full Howard Hughes at this point.
Not yet. So I was happy to get that photo from him, and I'm happy to pass on that lesson to you, our listener.
Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle and Zuckerberg, Larry Page, and hopefully the late, great estate of George Carlin as well.
Oh, man, my favorite of all time.
So hope you take this lesson and apply it to your life that next time you think you know the outcome of something that you want to try, and don't pass it up and just go out there and try. You never know what's going to end up happening. So
what a great message to end the show on, Lou.
Well, let's wrap it up then.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening. I am your host, Hot Lou.
See you next Hump Day Eve.
We'll talk to you next Lou's Day.